Hi everyone, Vacha here from Recording Studio 9 and thanks for joining me today. And today's video is about Pipeline plugin which is found in PreSonus Studio One DAW, the Professional Edition. This video has 3 sections. First part, I'm going to briefly talk about what Pipeline is and what it does. Second, I'm going to show you a slideshow of the whole setup process so you have some concept and idea of what Pipeline does and how it all interconnects. And third part is the part when I'm going to physically show you Pipeline in action. Now this video is going to be lengthy because it's quite technical. And I want you to understand the whole concept, how Pipeline works. And for that, I'll hope that you watch all the way through so that when you're about to implement this feature in your song project in Studio One Professional, you'll get it to go in the first go. And of course, if you still have questions, you can always comment below and I'm more than happy to answer them for you. But I hope that by watching this video, there won't be too many comments about this video. Hope that makes sense. Now, this video also refers to PreSonus items. One is Studio Channel 1824, which is an audio interface with 8 inputs and 8 outputs, and also the Studio Channel Tube preamplifier, which has a compression and an equalizer built in. Now, both those items are sitting on my rack underneath all those patch cables. Don't worry, don't let them scare you because I need to patch them through. But in your case, you may not even need a patch bay or any patch connections because you can connect them directly between them using just any patch lead. So without any further delay, let's get on to the explanation. So, what is Pipeline VST in Studio One Pro? It basically, just like any other VST plugin, like a compressor or an EQ that you put as an insert in your channel to process the audio within the DAW, so everything is digital. What Pipeline allows is within that channel that you've got, instead of adding a compressor or an EQ or any other plugin, it directs the audio out into your audio interface's output, physical output, and then listens to an input from your audio interface. And then the audio routing continues. That means you can actually send the audio just for that channel, or if you are using buses, of that bus, out into a physical world where you can have a physical hardware like a compressor or an EQ or an effects, and the audio is, or that channel is sent out to that, and then return coming back, feeding back to the same channel. So this allows you to somehow use the analog world in your digital world. Now you may argue why you want to go to all that trouble where you've got, hundreds and thousands of plugins that you can actually use, as a VSTs. Why would you want to do that? Well, a lot of people will argue that analog sound is different and using those hardware compressors and EQs will bring in the tonalities and the tonal characteristics of those devices, hardware devices, into your songs. And of course, you can have emulations of those devices as a VST plugin, but like including myself, I personally feel that analog devices being introduced into your tracks will give that extra oomph and warmth and clarity or fuzziness or grit, and then feed it back into the rest of the song. Now, is it necessary? Absolutely not. You don't need to. No way. You can do all of that in plugins. But would you want to? Well, I do. So that's what Pipeline helps me do in Studio One, that allows me to introduce the analog gear that I have, like compressors and EQs, into my signal chain so my songs feel the way I like them to feel. So if this is something you want to do, well, stick around because the next stage is step number 2, and I'll show you how this whole pipeline concept works with my slideshow and commentary. To add pipeline onto your channels or your buses, you can locate the plugin onto your plugin browser section. There are 2 versions of pipeline, a mono and a stereo version. You can drag and drop the appropriate version onto your channels or onto your tracks. Remember, Pipeline VST is only available in the Studio One Pro edition. It's not available in Prime or Artist editions. In our next step, to make sure that we don't get any audio loops or feedbacks or different levels, it's advisable to turn off our universal control mixer and put it in a bypass mode. Opening the universal control and double-clicking on the image of your Studio 1824, we will open up the universal control mixer. In the top right-hand corner, we can click on the settings icon, and then from the dialog, we can select Mixer Bypass. The next step is to make the physical connections between Studio 1824, and in this example, I'm using Studio Channel Tube Mic Pre. Using TRS connections, we can use output 5 from 1824 into the input of Studio Channel, and the output of Studio Channel back to the input 5 of Studio 1824. Using the same input numbers and output numbers makes it easy to track and trace the audio routings. From our within song project settings or through Pipeline I/O settings, we can open up the Audio I/O setup and make sure that our input and output matrix is set up correctly. This will allow us to select input 5 and output 5 in our example of Studio 1824 for our pipeline input and output settings. While we have our track or channel playing in a loop, we'll adjust the pipeline input level for at least minus 18 dB of signal. This signal should now feed into our outboard gear, in this case our studio channel. And we make sure that the output gain is set to 0 to unity. Now we can adjust the gain of input 5 on the Studio 1824 for about minus 10 dB peak on the level meters on the unit itself. And then we can adjust the pipeline input gain if required to make sure that we get clean audio all the way through. While we have our track playing in a loop, we can adjust our outboard gear, in this case Studio Channel's compression and EQ, to get the best compression, dynamics, and tonality that we require. The next step is to render, print, or save the processed audio onto its own track or onto a new track. Although it's not really required, but it's always a good idea to render and save all the processed audio onto its own track or onto a new track. That way you can move on to a next project without worrying about the settings, in case you need to come back to the previous project again. So now that you know the concept, let me show you how this is all done in real action. And to demonstrate pipeline in action, I'm going to use a song from Menon, Through My Eyes. It's got a great vocal, so a perfect opportunity to showcase pipeline as well as the studio channel from PreSonus. So through my patch bay, I have my studio channel connected to input and output of my PreSonus Studio 1824. PreSonus somehow likes the word studio, so everything is studio, so it sometimes can be confusing. So Studio 1824 is my audio interface, and Studio Channel is my Tube Pre in Studio One using Pipeline. Okay, so let's get on. So let's have a quick listen to Menon, Through My Eyes, raw unmixed song, and the last track there or channel is his lead vocal. So let's have a quick listen and see how it actually sounds without anything.
If you could hold yourself in these arms, If you could breathe you in the dark. If you could look at you from my point of view, you'd understand the magic in my heart.
So it's got lots of dynamics because it's a very mellow song, beautiful vocals. So let's see how Pipeline works in this one. So I've got Pipeline here in my browser. I'm just going to drag the mono one because it's a mono track. I'm just going to put it right on there. So now we've got PipelineXT. The next thing we want to do is we want to send the signal out. To do that, we go into the output settings. And as you can see, I already have 3, 4, and 5 enabled as the output. To have a look, let's have a look at the audio setup of our outputs. As you can see, I've got my main output at 1 and 2, outputs 3 and 4. I have mono ones for 3, 4, and 5 that I've just added. I also have a phone's output for queuing for 1 and 2 as well. But your setup might be a little bit different, but this is my setup. But you're going to make sure that you have, if we're processing mono, we've got mono outputs. Or if you're processing stereo, like my 3 and 4, will be my choice, selecting that as my output if I'm processing a stereo bus. So 5 is my output, and the input 1 to 8, and I've got as well as 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 enabled there, as well as stereo pairs. So we're going to be using this input and this output. So let's close that one. So here I'm going to select the output 5 to go, and then for the input I'm going to select 5 as well, because that's what I have connected my patching here. And let's call this device Studio Tube. As a reference. So now we've got it. The next thing we want to do to make sure that we've got the right settings and adjustments, I'm just going to click Auto. Now this will send a signal out into a ping noise out and return back as well. The orange one that we see is what's going out, and the blue or cyan color is what's coming in. So we can see that it's actually too loud coming in. It's clipping there as well. So let's adjust some of the settings while we click. So now we've got low volume. I've already adjusted my input, making sure that it's all set. I'm just going to put my Studio One in bypass mode, so no EQ, no compression, and no tube as well. Tube is turned off. So let's have a ping now. Yep. So now, and let's have a look at the meter coming in. You may not be able to see the meter, but I can. And it's giving me about -3 dB or -2 thereabout, which is good. Good signal coming in. Back into gain reduction. And let's adjust the input volume of input 5 as we trigger. And looking at the screen to make sure that we get very close to similar output. There we go. So that's about right. We don't want to go too loud. That might be a little bit too loud as well. I might go a little bit less. That's all good there. Because remember, you're going to compress an EQ, so it's going to change. So we're going to keep an eye on that. We've done that, so we can now go out of that. Now, a signal will go through our audio interface into Studio Channel and back again and back into our pipeline and into our channel. So let's have a listen now. Again, I still have Studio Channel in bypass mode.
Through my eyes, I see forever and you. All my dreams and desires, alive and come true.
Okay, so we've got the signal all going. To demonstrate that this is going through the tube, let me just put into this mode. We should be able to see the signal go up as we play the audio.
I see my If you could hold.
So as you can see, I've turned them down, and so that's the effect of it.
Look at you from my point of view. You'd understand the magic in my heart. Through my and you I see my destiny and the meaning in my life. You'd understand if you could only see yourself through.
And once you are happy with all the settings that you've got, the levels and so on, the best idea, as I mentioned, is to render it so that the track is permanently re-recorded with the right settings. So you don't have to rely on keeping these settings forever for this project. And if you're never going to remember how it was before, sure, you can take photos and things, but the way to render it is you select the clip. This is my vocal clip. I can right click on there and then event and then bounce to new track or Control Alt B. This will actually play that track all the way through from the beginning of the song till the end and re-record in real time at the new track with the settings that we have on our tube compressor.
If you could hold yourself in these arms, if you could breathe you in the dark, if you could look at you, how lost I am, you'd understand if you could only see yourself through my eyes.
Okay, and now that is done. So we have a new copy track. As you can see, automatically mutes the original track, and now you have the new track. It may not look that different. Let's have a quick look on the tracks. Now, though you may not think that the two tracks, the old one and the new one, don't look any much different, but there is a difference. You can actually see how breaths are more emphasized and the picks are taken care of. It all depends, of course, how much you want to process. In this case, all I actually wanted to do is to compress a little bit with not much compression happening and to bring out the actual more energy and emphasis and the feelings in the vocal. So now we can add maybe a little bit of EQ and if compression, if need to, more like a fader writing, and this vocal track is pretty much finished. Of course, I should mention that, it is time consuming where you have to render each track, and if you're going through 20, 30 tracks at about 4 minutes each, that's how many hours you are going to spend rendering each track through your outboard processor. Now, I did not go into the specifics of PipelineXT. I just shown you, the inputs and the outputs because that was the whole purpose of this video. For more detailed, there are lots of other videos out there that demonstrate and talk about all of its other functions and capabilities. I'll leave that to maybe either the next video or if you have already found other YouTubers that have talked about those settings. Well, I hope now you know what Pipeline is and how it works, and then you can decide if it's something you want to use in your project as well. Of course, that all depends if you already own hardware units that you like to implement within your song projects. If this was helpful, make sure you give it a thumbs up, and of course don't forget to subscribe to my channel as well and hit that bell and everything else that you like to do. Until next time, as always, thanks for watching and have a great time making music. Cheerio, guys.